All right. Thank you for coming in, everybody. Today, we're going to continue our discussions. We've only had one, but now we have a second one with our conversations with PD, where today we're going to have Noah Johnson, Lieutenant from QCPD, is going to be presenting to us and answering some questions that we have, just in an effort to work better together, understand how each other operates, and deliver better service.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Cool. You want to give us a quick background about you, where you came from, before we get started?
So I came from Tempe PD. Well, I retired from Tempe PD about 2017 as a commander. I thought I was done with police work. Went to work. I was a flight instructor for a while, and then I went to work for the County School District as their safety and security coordinator. And really wasn't looking to go back to law enforcement, but this job opened up and looked obviously very interesting to start a police department. That really doesn't happen, right? And my wife said you need to go back to work, so I don't know what that meant. But anyways, so here I am, and I'm glad I'm here. This is an awesome experience. Been in, like I said, really police work my whole life. At 19, I worked at for the Department of Corrections on death row before I became an officer. So I did some correction stuff, worked in the jail, then worked in every bureau in the police department, from K-9 to SWAT to all different things. So
cool. And here we are.
Here we are.
All right. So why don't we just start off, just give us a general rundown of your staffing, how your units are,
Sure.
how you're broken up geographically across the town.
Right. So we have a day swings and a graves, right, in patrol. Of course, there's two of them because they work 410, so they overlap. And, you know, when we started, we had an idea where calls for service were, but we really didn't know. So our swings overlaps on Fridays, graves overlaps on Saturdays, days overlaps on Mondays. Days is 5 to 3, swings is 1 to 11, and then graves is 9 to 7. So, and then we have detectives, right? With 7 detectives, and they work everything from sex crimes to property crimes, that sort of thing. We have 2 motor officers, and I'm trying to think on the sworn side. That's pretty much it. We're starting a community engagement squad. Started making everyone's heading that up. We don't have officers assigned there just yet. Of course, we have our SROs. They're working in the schools. And we have about 8 civilian employees, records, admin, that sort of thing. We're hiring a few more of those as we move along. So we're getting to about 80 employees now.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we have 6 beats. We just basically took over the same beats that kept it pretty much for little tweaks that MCSO is using. Because we really didn't know, and they seem to be working out pretty good. We use Rittenhouse to kind of split in east and west, right? But the officers stay in the beats unless they need to go somewhere else. I imagine just like you guys, Station 1 is probably the busiest, be my guess, right?
Oh, you would be correct.
Yeah,
yes.
okay. So, I live across the street, so I kind of know.
Yeah.
So of course those beats on the west side are the busiest. So, the east side guys end up over there backing up and taking calls and that sort of thing. So
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's why we see a bunch in one spot sometimes.
That's right.
Cool. So are you able to, and I've heard different things, because I used to ask MCSO, hey, can you pat this patient down before we go to the hospital? Sure. And sometimes they'd be like, sure. And then sometimes they'd look a little leery about doing that. And then I heard that there was maybe some legalities of what our officers can and can't do. So can you give us a little rundown of what your officers are able or not able to do when it comes to patting down a patient who's not necessarily thinking they committed a crime,
right,
but we're going to be transported to the hospital and just want to keep our personnel safe?
Sure. So, I always try to explain to people, when a police officer shows up wearing a police uniform, right, they're identified as a police officer, so does the U.S. Constitution, right? And especially the 4th Amendment. So it sounds kind of an over-the-top statement, but it really isn't, right? Because anything I say, do, or whatever, especially when you start detaining people or doing investigations and that sort of thing, the Constitution's in your back pocket. So the answer is, it depends, right? We can search people when we arrest them, right? It's called search incident lawful arrest. You've seen it, right? Put them in handcuffs, or dig everything through their pockets and things like that. The other time we can really search with people outside of a search warrant is consensual, obviously. We're like, hey, can I check your pockets? Sure, officer, you can check my pockets. Okay, so it's a consensual kind of circumstance. And then the other one is what we call a Terry frisk. It's a case law called Terry versus Ohio, and it really surrounds where if officer has reason to believe that somebody's armed, right? You get in the specific case was the officer gets called to an armed robbery call. He engages people that match the suspect's description. A weapon was used. He does an outside pat search, right, and finds a weapon, right? So that established a scenario where officers can do an outside a frisk is what we call it, right? So if somebody's under arrest going to the hospital, then sure, we can do searches, right? If there's some reason to believe that might be armed, right, then obviously we can do a pat search. So then there's consensual. Hey, man, you go to the hospital, make the firefighters feel better. Do you mind if I check your pockets? No, sure, go ahead, right? Outside of that, the answer is no, right? So because we just have no legal reason to do it. In the perfect world, everybody we come in contact with, we check everything before, to make sure it's safe, but that's just, we don't have the legal right to do that. So it's scenario based, right?
Okay.
Now, if you're firefighters and they're working on somebody and feels a gun on them, we have a different ball game. Like, hey man, that guy's wearing a gun. Okay. Now we have a safety issue. We can handle it. Right. But outside of that, we can do searches.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if we have like a psych patient, they're not necessarily suspected of committing a crime.
Right.
We don't really know if they're armed, but we just want to make sure they don't have anything dangerous in their pockets or whatever.
Right.
There's a possibility that your officers may, hey, I can't search them.
Correct.
But
right.
We can. We're not police officers. We're not bound by the same thing. So we would just have to do it and be careful.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a scenario where, like I said, it's a consensual thing. Typically when you're dealing with a psych patient, right, you're having a conversation, develop a rapport, like, hey man, especially being cooperative, right? Mm-hmm. Do you mind if we check, make sure you're cool? No, that's fine. Okay. We can do that kind of thing for sure. But that, like I said, is situational, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're not going to be able to just automatically search everybody. That's not going to be able to happen.
Okay. Cool.
I like it. That's good information.
Yeah. So, you want to?
Sure. One of the other questions that comes up a lot from our guys is, how do we help with the evidence preservation? What should we do or not do?
Yeah, don't drive the fire truck over it. No, no. I mean, let's be frank. When we're in a life-saving mode, the evidence thing is obviously low priority, right?
Right.
Some of the things that we see sometimes is, let's say you guys go to a suicide, a shooting of some sort, somebody shot, the gun's there, right? Even cops do this. They're like, oh, we got to unload it. No, you don't. Don't touch. If it's like right there, we need to move it for you to safely do CPR, doing whatever you guys are doing. That's fine, right? And if we're not there yet, and you need to move it to a safe place, that's fine. But just leave it in that safe place, right? Don't try to unload it or whatever. And then when the officers get there, say, hey man, the gun was right here. Right? And I moved it right here. Awesome. Thanks. And how'd you touch it? Well, I just grabbed the back of the grip or whatever. Or I just scooted it with my hand or whatever. Thank you. So if it ends up being an evidentiary issue, right, who was holding on to that gun, we probably come get that firefighter's fingerprints to eliminate them from the other fingerprints we find on it. If we get to that place, or DNA or whatever it might be, if that becomes an issue. But in general, the less you can move stuff around, the less you touch things, obviously. And then whatever you guys end up kind of, you guys want to clean stuff up, right? Just leave it. And it's just part of the scene now, right? Because you're going to leave stuff behind, which contaminates. But when you pick it up and take it away and clean it, you're probably contaminating it even worse, right? So the wrappers or whatever from any of the the medicine you're given or whatever it might do, just leave it right there, right? When we're talking those kind of scenes that potentially has a crime related to it. So those are kind of the big things. I've got to see a firefighter, happens to be a gun guy, or a gal. And they're like, hey, I pulled a magazine, I unloaded, it's safe. Okay. Because how that gun's loaded or the condition it is could be at issue down the road, right?
Yeah.
Especially if we're, it's an officer involved shooting or something like that, right? So just the less you can touch things. And if you have to, that's fine. Just tell us what you did, right?
Okay.
And we're going to record that on body camera. And so we can recreate that scene if we need to, right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Accident scenes. I was on one the other day that was looking kind of serious, and one of your firefighters was doing great community service, grabbed a broom and was starting to sweep up, like, hey, wait, just yet.
Knock it off.
Yeah. So I felt bad, and it's just, those serious wrecks, potentially can be a crime, right? Especially if somebody's impaired, or they're speeding or there's a significant traffic violation and we have serious physical injury or death, right? So before you guys, start cleaning stuff up, I mean, again, life-saving, get the truck, protecting the scene is always going to be number one, right? And then if you guys got to use tools to get inside the car, so be it. But once we're done with that, then we don't touch things anymore and that sort of thing. And then if you do say, hey, we had to rip this door open to get the guy out, let us know, right? So we know that's not part of the dynamics of the crash. It's something you guys did to it. Typically, we're there fast enough and see what you're doing, but
Yeah.
Those sort of things is just the less you can disturb, the better. But saving somebody's life is more important. So.
Yeah. So if there's probably a crime committed or a serious accident where the person who caused it is going to probably have committed a crime.
Right.
Just be super careful.
Yep.
Going forward and take a note of anything you do have to move.
Yeah, and this kind of the accident thing's interesting, right? Because it's either an accident, which is just we fill out paperwork and write somebody a ticket, or it's a felony that somebody go to prison to go, you know what I mean? But it's the same scenario depending on impairment and things like that. So, one of the things that you guys can do to help us, if you're smelling alcohol on a patient you're working or you see drugs or whatever, please alert us, right? Like, hey, ETOH, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, rescue personnel they don't want to get subpoenaed in court and all that. That's, let us know so we can get down there and smell it and be part of collecting that evidence. Because time's at the issue when we're talking about DUIs, right? We try to get that evidence within 2 hours. They can do is called retrograde extrapolation, where they can kind of do a formula to get the person back to what they were probably were at the time of driving. But the faster we can get that information, the better. Otherwise, we're following up the hospital and, we're behind the ball down there, right? And it's a little more challenging. So if we know that information up front, what kind of wreck we have, because how we respond and the type of personnel we bring out, it's gonna matter, right? Whether patrol can take it or we need to bring traffic units out that have a higher level specialty to investigate these things and do reconstruction and that sort of thing. So the more information you give us out there to scene, that's great. And a lot of times, I know, paramedics are like, somebody like me would come up and like, okay, is this guy going to die? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, really, right?
Super common.
Right. And you're like, well, it's level 1 by, you guys use like mechanism anymore? I mean, is that the term or whatever, whatever it is?
Yes. Sometimes we'll say that still.
You say that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, but I need to know, what's it looking like, right? And the reason we're asking that is where do we need to take this investigation, right? Is it even though somebody has a broken arm or, maybe has a little bit of a brain bleed, that's not going to rise to necessarily a aggravated assault, endangerment, or something like that. And we're not going to hold anybody to the fire. This is not a legal question. It's a response question for us.
You want to know how much resources,
correct,
detectives and investigators, how much to bring to the scene.
Exactly. So, I think a lot of times paramedics are like, that's not, I can't answer that. That's it's HIPAA, it's legal. No, I just need to know what kind of personnel that we need, and do we need to hold the scene?
And
right.
That brings up a really good point. That's actually not a HIPAA violation. That's part of the.
I was going to ask next.
That's the operational piece, and that's totally allowed within the law. So that's a good point for our people, is that they can actually answer that question.
Good. I'll tell my crew we could be a little more. We don't have to be as nuanced about it then.
Exactly.
Because we ruined a guy's day the other day. He got in a wreck, just careened somebody going down Ellsworth, and he had his kids. I think it was his weekend.
Right.
And he one of my guys in the back seat, he bird dogged it and was like, smells really like cologne in here.
Right.
And so then they went, and sure enough, he to cover up the alcohol smell, but he was super drunk.
Right.
Had fat cats and then was driving his kids home.
Which that is a felony,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's, and then he gets in a wreck. So
yep.
Yeah, that's why we're asking the question. We're not, if you guys go, I think he's going to die, and then we go there an hour from now and the guy's sitting up, playing cards with his loved ones, we're not going to be mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're not holding you to it. we'd rather over respond,
Mm-hmm.
right, than under respond on something like this. Because if somebody ends up being a true victim of a crime, we want to make sure we did everything we could to completely investigate it. So your average patrol officer, has a certain amount of accident investigation training, but it's really in the realm of normal, because accidents are civil in nature, right? They're not. It's not really a crime. It's frankly, a lot of the work we do is for insurance companies. Let's be frank, right?
Yeah.
But once there's impairment or some reckless driving involved, now we're into the criminal arena, right? And we need to bring out right now, Evan Storch, he's about finishing up his reconstruction training. By the time he's done, he's going to have 480 hours.
Dang.
Of training above and beyond what a patrol officer has, right? And then we bring out the specialized equipment, the scanning. We have it's called Trimble, but it's a scanner that takes a 3D photo of the scene, and from that we can get very specific measurements and determine crush on a car, to determine speed and that sort of thing. Probably one of the most recent accidents where we brought out a team to do that was the young man on Rittenhouse had the teenagers going southbound, probably at ludicrous speed, right, and lost control and ended up in that kind of cell phone tower area there.
Yeah.
So, and that was a fatal, right? So that's a big deal crash, right? Especially when you got young people involved. So the team came out for that. Currently, we have an IGA with PCSO. There's a regional task force that comes out and helps us with that level of expertise. But pretty soon we're going to have that capability. So that's why we're asking, do we need to shut off Ellsworth and Rittenhouse for 4 hours?
So,
right.
So we just need to be sure not to use jargon and just give you a straight up answer.
Straight up answer.
Nope, he's not going to die, or he's going to be really injured. He may die, or he's probably going to die, or something. Yeah, something very clear to you and not telling you that he's an immediate level 1 or whatever.
Right. Are they going to die? How serious is this, serious physical injury, right? And usually we can, we can kind of tell, right? But if you're like, hey, this guy's got a pretty serious brain injury, or he got a pretty good smack on the head, right? Just plain language, how serious is this deal, right? Because we've all been, especially nowadays with the technology in cars, they can be smashed to smithereens, right? And you think somebody's got to be dead, and they're completely fine, right? Yeah. But you're still going to transport them because of the level of damage or whatever might be there, right? So just that kind of plain talk for the sergeant is going to be helpful.
Cool. That's really good to know.
Okay.
Wow. So I know in the past fire department that I worked for, there were certain calls that we were required to call PD, like dog bites, because they had to document things. What are certain calls, like if we get dispatched to it and you're not already there, what are some types of calls that you all would like to get dispatched to?
So anything domestic related, right? I tell everybody the same thing. When you get that feeling in your stomach, like something not right here, call us, right? You can't overcall us. You just can't, right? We're not going to be mad. So dog bites is obviously one of them that we need to come investigate. Anything that looks or feels like a crime, right? The ODs you need to pay special attention to, right? Are we sure they took this themselves? You know what I mean? Especially if somebody's going to die. We need to be there for those. Anything that looks like it's going to be a death, right? Mm-hmm. Even grandpa who's 90 some years old and he's had a good run. We still need to be there, right? Yeah, because we don't know. They may have got mad at grandpa, right? You know what I mean? Who knows?
Grandpa has a lot of money,
right? So, it's just it takes it off you guys. Let us do the investigation. Let's look at it and make sure everything looks cool. So, any serious physical injuries, kids playing on a roof, falls off, gets hurt pretty bad. Probably need to look at that. You got to think about the parent neglect thing. Do we have that issue going on? Or any type of abuse, that sort of thing. So all those kind of deals that are like, this is outside the normal injury realm, or how they said this happened doesn't make sense, right? You have a kid with a compound fracture and they're like, oh, he fell off the couch. You're like, that doesn't, those don't equal, right? So even if it's a minor injury and they fell off the couch, there's nothing wrong with us coming out as part of the public safety response to look at it and make sure everything's cool.
Yeah, especially those duty to report situations. It'd be good to just make sure you're there.
Absolutely.
Things also.
That takes it all off your plate. You're like, hey, we called the cops. They came out there. They investigated it. So
yeah. Sweet.
Talking about communications, I know we've been working towards getting common frequencies in the radios.
Yep.
We're waiting for a template update for fire, which is going to happen here in another month or two. But what channels can we or should we be accessing, and what kind of calls do you think we should be able to talk on that?
So they just probably last week, I gave them the list of they can have access to these channels. So you're going to have access to our main channel. Right now we have one operational channel for the whole town, one dispatcher, one channel. And then we have a plethora of about 7 or 8 others to anticipate growth. An information channel, we can grow into several different operational channels, special event channels, things like that. So you guys will have access to all those. In fact, the only thing I didn't get, you have access to one tactical channel. So there's a common tactical channel, and there's one tactical channel you will not have access to. And there's like a narcotics and detective channel that very few people will have access to. So other than that, all the common channels you guys will have in your template update there. So it's interesting. Go back to 1992 when I first started as a police officer. We started a police fire working group. And one of the first things we did is we put our police radios in fire trucks, which back in 92, that's unheard of.
Wow, yeah.
And so the biggest thing we had was getting the captains over the fear of getting on the radio, right? We're not going to get mad. So, mostly they use it to monitor. So when we say, hey, yeah, it's code 4, send them in, they're already heading in when you're dispatch, the dispatch lag happens there, right? But there were several times the firefighters identified, because they're outside the perimeter, right?
Right.
And they see things, and they identify some potential dangers for our officers. And then we can immediately talk to them like, don't come in. Things have changed in the last 30 seconds from last time we told you it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Or, hey, you need to get the vests and helmets on, right? This is still a potential warm scene or whatever it might be. So there's several times, my experience in Tempe, where that happened. So the way I look at it is, you guys know, you don't get on the frequency when obviously business is happening, right? And so if you don't hear talking and you think you need to tell us something, and the question is, well, I don't know your call sign, so you probably never will, right? So, engine 414 to the on-duty sergeant or on-scene sergeant. They're going to, hey, I need this, or what do you guys need, or whatever it might be. Plain language, we're going to be fine.
What are the call signs of your units? Just curious.
So
is it Adam and Sam? Or
yeah. So, there's, day swings. So it's the first number in patrol is what squad they are. So like, the way Mesa does it, which is odd, the graveyards is like the first shift of the day. So you'll have 1 George 10, right? So Graves, and then 10 is the beat. So that's more the kind of the northwest part of the town. So, and then the next one would be, 1 George 20, 1 George 30 for the squad. And then day shift is like 2 David 10, 2 David 20, whatever. Those are kind of normal patrols. So you have Graves, Daves, and then swings, Sam. And then sergeants are all Sam. So Sam 800, Sam 801, Sam 802. It was really a challenge when we developed. There was a lot of talk about call signs because you have this. We couldn't be anything but Mesa Police or Mesa Fire has. So, like you guys have a ladder 2 something or whatever, maybe something like that.
Ladder 201, ladder 204,
Okay,
ladder 209.
so that's L201, right?
Yep.
So I couldn't be Lincoln 201, right? So we had to be different than anything in Mesa's, and that's a lot of call signs.
It's a lot of call signs.
A lot.
That's a crap load, right?
Yeah.
So
they've got lots of strange, obscure units too. That
they do. So we had to work around that. So all our SAMs, our sergeants, are 800 and above because they're like from 1 to 7 or something like that, right? So all the sergeants are SAM 800, 801, whatever. Detectives are David.
Don't tell them that rural metro is 801s, and don't tell them that.
No, we won't tell them that.
Good.
So, it's funny. You think numbers and letters, there should be like a ridiculous number, because we want to do for the dispatchers, kind of the same as we could as Mesa, so it didn't really confuse them. But even with that, we able to. So my call sign is Lincoln Victor 10. So I couldn't be Lincoln anything because that's already taken up. And so in Mesa's theory, Victors are command staff, right? So like commanders, assistant chiefs, and chiefs, right? So because lieutenants here serve operational and command level roles, so that's why we're linking Victor 10 and like the chiefs like Victor 800 or something. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not that we'd ever use it probably because I'm not going to know, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Merely curious.
If at any time we ever end up with our own PSAP, then of course we can make up whatever we want. But at this point, we have to kind of work within the MESA system.
Could be all the Lincoln 201s you want.
Yes.
I think they give the chief a cool call sign like Raptor or something like
that.
that.
I told him,
Typhoon.
I said, you're Victor 800. He's like, what? Okay. So I said, you can be the big toe or whatever you want to be.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
No, good to know though. So just come up in general. Hey, Queen Creek Fire, ladder 411 to on duty sergeant.
Yep.
Done.
Yeah. Or the officer at whatever intersection or whatever it might be.
They'll understand who we're talking to.
Totally.
And do you talk like, hey, you, it's me, or hey, this is me? Because we do ladder 411 to alarm. We talk backwards of NIMS.
Yeah. So we do it. We do it like that. So
you do like that too?
Well, so it's interesting. We don't even do that. So like if I were to get on the radio right now, Lincoln Victor 10, that's just knowing I'm calling dispatch, right?
Wow. You even take a step out.
Yeah. So and then, but if I'm calling an officer and it's Lincoln Victor 10 to, to David 20, whatever.
Okay. So you do like we do.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if we said me to you.
Yeah. So I'm in the aviation world too, and they do it opposite.
Yeah.
Aviation's backwards.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody in the country does it opposite of what we do, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But if there's a big incident, we promise we'll switch back and talk NIMS.
So at the end of the day, plain language always works, right?
Yeah.
And so to that point, special events, I'll say this, should we do a trunk or treat this year? Officers will have call signs like Ellsworth and Ocotillo. Mark will be command. I'll be, walking beat north or something like that to try to be a little more NIMSy, right? So if we replace those officers, it doesn't matter who they are. It's about the call sign and the position they're holding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right. So, what are your expectations? This conversation came up about if an officer is shot. Obviously, if there's something big, like there's probably gonna be more police there, and there'll be someone to handle it. But maybe it's just a EMS call, and there's just one officer that's with us, and something happens, and that officer gets shot. Is there like a way that you want us to handle, like taking off his vest or handling things or anything specific?
No, it's all Velcro, right? So you just pull the Velcro pieces off, and you can take that vest off as you want. You're probably not going to be able to cut through the Kevlar. So now the straps don't have Kevlar on the top.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's a place you want to, that's probably the easiest place to, if you can cut that and then just pull it off them.
Okay.
But they do undo, right, with Velcro. So it depends on your time you want to take to get that vest off. But the sides has Velcro, it just wraps around the front.
So it's got a girdle on the side that's Velcro like ours.
Yep. And so you just pull that off, and that, that's how we pull over the top of our head, right? But on the top, there's Velcro pieces as well that you can kind of unfold. They're a little more cumbersome, probably in an emergency. And so if you were just to cut the top of them off, sorry, bumped the mic.
Good.
You can probably do that too. So
okay,
and then secure it because there's going to be stuff on it, right? Obviously, taser potentially, things like that.
We'll make sure we won't put that to the side and let the tweaker brother-in-law in the other room get a hold of it.
Please, thank you.
Yeah.
So right.
Okay, well, that was easy.
Yep.
What else is there? Anything else that you want us to know as the fire department to help make your guys' job easier?
The opportunity for things you've always wanted to say to the fire department.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Keep in mind, everyone's going to see this. But.
Right. No, I'll be honest with you. It's been a very smooth transition. I would say the one question that comes up, which is interesting, and it's probably just, especially the outstate guys, and even I kind of noticed it. I'm used to when you have somebody that's shot or has some significant trauma, and you guys used to scoop them up and run off with them, right? Now it seems like you guys work them at the scene for a significant amount of time. Is there a shift in theory on that, or is that just something we do out here in East Valley? Or
everything's kind of situation dependent.
Okay,
but in general, like if somebody's having a major bleed, yes, we want to get them to a surgeon as fast as possible.
Right.
But they may at that scene decide, okay, there's some interventions that we can do to slow the bleeding to where if we spend a couple minutes now, it's going to buy them a long time.
Gotcha.
And so that's probably what they're thinking. Because I've been there where you're just kind of plugging holes and putting things in places before you move them and get them going.
Right.
But we do definitely want to be fast.
Sure.
And I can see some smaller places kind of freaking out, especially maybe if they don't have a lot of paramedics.
Right.
Just scooping them up and leaving and going as fast as you can.
Yeah.
But there may be some times where we focus on scene a little bit to do some of those life-saving interventions like tourniquets and chest seals and with trauma in particular. And if somebody is codes, if they have cardiac arrest or heart stops, we will work them on scene for a while.
Gotcha.
And with a trauma, it's like less than 1% chance of survival.
Right.
So we risk a lot to save a lot. So if the person's probably already dead, we're going to work them on scene, and we may not transport that person at all.
Gotcha.
Part of it comes down to capability. There's things that we can do in the field that we weren't always able to.
Okay.
So depending on the situation, we may, like Dave said, take that time and do some things that we're able to that are going to pay a bigger dividend in the short term.
Right.
So and then we'll pick them up and run.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that is a good point. Things have come a long way, and we're a pretty awesome fire department. I don't know if you've heard that, you know.
Yes.
I'm sure
that goes without saying.
Yeah. And I'm sure like you guys get all the cool bells and whistles when you came on, the best tasers, the best cameras, you know what I mean? So it's just we're treated very well in Queen Creek. They're all very serious about their public safety. It's the same with the fire department. We have a lot of great tools at our disposal, a lot of stuff that's pretty cutting edge, things that we do and other departments. We're a little smaller, more nimble, easier to make changes with us. Yeah. And then other places are, you're putting F500 in your truck, so you're putting this on the truck. So there's some kind of cool stuff that we got. So yeah, that's why we might be hanging out a little bit, is doing stuff that maybe the fire department they're from maybe didn't have. Right.
So it's and that's what's cool about our agency too, is to be able to make decisions and change things on the fly. And it's been challenging with vendors. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. Well, don't your command staff? I'm like, you're looking at them. We're going to do this,
it's
right?
Done.
Yeah. So it's been really enjoyable to be able to do that. So no, I just everybody appreciates you at the scene. It just seems like working together just happens, right? So the other night, Chris and I were out on that deal at Canyon State Academy with the kid that passed.
Yeah.
And highly complex, emotionally charged scene, right? You have 40, 50 kids in this cottage that we had a crime scene, right? We had to move kids. We had to deal with staff, separate witnesses while you guys are doing your thing. And that really just seemed to happen really well. Hey, what's the plan? Hey, we're going to transport this kid. We got another kid. We're going to check him out, that sort of thing. That communication was great. So it just, for me, it's a very similar experience I had in Tempe, where we worked together quite a bit. And I've heard comments from other officers who may have not had that experience with their fire department, said, these guys are great. They talk to us. They're nice. And, that sort of thing. So I think it's going well. It's great. I mean, there hasn't been anything that's just like, oh my gosh, I wish they wouldn't do that. I mean, it just hasn't happened,
That's good to hear.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about vice versa?
No, I've been very pleased. I mean, I work at one, so like we established earlier, we run more calls than everybody else. But no, but we have a lot of interactions with your officers and sergeants, and it's been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, especially when it comes to like the psych patients, which we've talked about that quite a bit, because it's a great resource for us, and for the family and for the patient themselves. It's better to just send them directly to the place that's going to help them, and not fill time in the emergency room.
It's such a big deal because we talk to our partner agencies, and they're like, they do what?
Yeah. That's another example how we're just kind of leading the way here in Queen Creek, just together, and helping those psych patients get to the right place. That just doesn't happen in other places for the most part.
No, I'm aware. It's Tempe was doing a pretty good job. Some of the East Valley agencies are doing a pretty good job. But I remember the guys that are from out of state, they're like, the fire just handled this. You know what I mean? So no, this is our gig. And so it's been a little bit of a mind shift with them. And so, but they say the same thing. It's, well, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Why would we be spending the fuel, frankly, and the time and the effort and the costs and whatever we're driving to this place? I mean, you get the old way in the police world was we'd arrest them for something. There's like, we find a reason to take them to jail to stop the problem tonight, right? When they really need some mental health. And then you guys would take them to the ER, right? Mm-hmm. And so now we're finally getting to the place where it's going. And we're the chief and I and the command staff have been talking to, we want to expand our capability because obviously we're significantly tasked with that issue here across the country, I think. But public safety is obviously getting hammered with this issue. Mesa contracts with Solar. You probably know that. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at potentially, there's a van down in Santan that we can tap into for sure because we're connected to the Mesa system. We benefit from that contract, but we're also looking at maybe upstaffing, even Queen Creek with a crisis van, or as we grow, we're going to need that capacity, right? So
it's almost justifiable now.
Oh, totally justifiable now, and definitely going to be necessary very, very soon. So.
And that's something that we could look at as a shared resource as well.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So you go back in the old days, Tempe PD used to have a victim assistance, but it turned into Care 7. I don't know if you guys, where that runs off grant money a lot. In fact, my mom worked for them for quite some time. So valuable resource for law enforcement and fire, because we have all our specific roles, and we're not necessarily trained to deal with those long-term care issues that we can turn people over to. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited for what we're going to be able to do together in the future, and what hasn't happened yet, and that we're going to come up with a solution for. It's exciting.
Yep. Probably what I think we've all talked that eventually on the road we're going to get pretty quick. We're going to do the active shooter thing, and to me, we always go to the active shooter thing. But we can have a school bus wreck, right? That's a mass casualty. We can have. I mean, let's be honest. There's planes flying over top of us, right? Big ones
with a lot of souls on board.
Yes. So being in the aviation world, I kind of recognize that that's probably something we need to talk about, right? Yeah. What's that going to look like, if that were to happen, right? So things of that nature, the schools, everybody always goes to active shooter. I'm like, okay, there's other things that happen that can be the Kansas City Academy is a perfect example.
Yeah.
What if 20 kids had taken the drug, right? Or 15, you know what I mean?
We'd have a casualty collection point.
Absolutely. Right. And so those are the things I think either with tabletops or whatever, we really need to look at in the next year or so and work together and start, role playing, right? And the boots on the ground kind of training thing with that.
Yeah. It was really great when 4 years ago or so, 5 years ago, when we had the training with Mesa PD and Gilbert PD.
Yeah.
And we did it at the ASU Polytechnic campus. It's like an old elementary school that was there that's been decommissioned.
Right.
And we had some great drills in there. We got all this great information, and MCSO, they weren't playing in the same playbook. And so it was kind of frustrating for us. So if we got called to Gilbert or we got called to Mesa, we'd know how to handle with them. But with MCSO, it was still Wild West because you can't just change their policy here in Queen Creek. You'd have to change the entire agency's playbook. So we're excited about doing that with
it'll look very similar to the Mesa and Gilbert way for sure.
And as the tactical programs evolve, I think that'll make it even better.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't talk about is we are starting to develop that tactical capability, right? We have obviously some officers that have tactical background. We're getting dogs, right? They're in training right now. We're going to build out a squad that's investigative in purpose, but also has a tactical capability and start to build out a SWAT team, if you will, for lack of a better term, right? Right now, we contract with some other agencies if we need that capacity, but and then we can build that tactical program with you guys, whether that's a tactical medic program or something similar, right? Where we at least start working closer together. And can get you guys closer to the warm zone if needed to handle some things. So.
Yeah. We have some paramedics with legit war zone experience that are really good. I have a guy in my back seat who's got tons of experience placing lots of stuff for trauma patients. And
I hate it's the one good thing that came out of the Gulf War and all those wars is this immediate. I mean, when I started, we weren't carrying tourniquet. I mean, that just didn't happen, right?
Yep.
And then when we started carrying them over in Tempe, I was like, okay, well, that's cool. And all of a sudden, we started saving lives left and right. And I'm like, oh, wow.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
It's a game changer for sure.
Yeah. That's what's exciting about those what is it called? A Stop the Bleed program.
Stop the Bleed programs
in the
yeah.
schools where they just have a bunch of chest seals and tourniquets, and
Yep.
because everybody just slowly bled away while the scene was going to be made safe.
Right. Right.
Kind of counterintuitive, but I'm glad we're cracking that code. And
Cool.
so, all right. Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. I'm sure we'll maybe have more of these as things come up, and maybe we roll out different policies or something. And
yeah, we probably should look at what's happened at the national stage, right? If
Yeah.
we on either side identify, okay, this is a new trend that we need to work together on, whether it's riots or whatever it might be. Because the reality of it is, police are getting a lot more mutual aiding than we used to be. Like you guys, you guys are really dialed in. We're getting better at it because, even a Mesa is going to need even the Trump thing this last weekend, right? Mesa needed our help, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it takes us all to kind of make some of these bigger things happen nowadays. So
yeah, cool. I'm excited.
all right,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.